That's what my son said as he shut the car door and left me standing in the driveway of Rose Hill residential home with nothing but a small suitcase and a paper bag of my medications. No hug. No backward glance. Just the slam of the door and the silence of a decision already made. I stood there for a long moment, the wind tugging at my coat sleeves. My hands trembled, not from cold but from the sudden hollow in my chest. Yesterday morning I was in my own kitchen, sipping tea and tossing breadcrumbs to the sparrows at the feeder. Today I was someone else's responsibility. A resident. A room number. A liability. The nurse who greeted me had that trained kindness, a sweetness practiced like a hymn. She touched my elbow lightly like I might collapse. "Mrs. Sanders, welcome to Rose Hill. I'm Kara. Let's get you settled in, shall we?" Her voice was gentle, too gentle. The kind of voice you use with someone you've already decided is fragile. But I wasn't. Not yet. My bones ache, yes. My back curves more than it once did. But I've walked through storms these girls can't imagine. The room was clean enough. Pale curtains, a narrow bed, a wardrobe with squeaky hinges, an armchair facing the window. It didn't smell of bleach, which surprised me, but it didn't smell of life either. Kara pointed to the button by the bed. "You press that if you need help." She looked at me like she expected tears. "I'll be fine," I said. And I was. Just not in the way she wanted me to be. "They told me it was temporary. Just until we figure things out, Mom. You'll be comfortable here." That was Emily's line, my daughter. Polished, rehearsed. Comfortable for whom, though? I hadn't asked to be placed here. No one asked what I wanted. I'd simply been delivered. Like a package too heavy to carry around any longer. That evening, after the small orientation and paperwork, I sat in the stiff armchair, watching streetlights flicker on. The view was in my garden. No roses, no bird feeder. Just a concrete path and a single plastic bench. Across the hall, through a cracked door, I saw another woman sleeping with her mouth open. Later, I'd learn her name was Mabel. Mabel was 84, sharp eyes, sharper tongue when she wanted. She leaned toward me the next morning during breakfast and said flatly, "They always say it's temporary. But no one leaves unless they're dead or forgotten." Her words stayed with me, carved themselves into the silence of my new room. By the third day, my children still hadn't called. I asked to use the phone. "Of course," the receptionist said with her too wide smile. "Most of our residents use their mobiles." "I don't have one," I said. "Emily told me I'd lose it. Or forget to charge it." The call rang out to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Emily and Mark. Leave a message." What was I supposed to say? "Thanks for dropping me off like an unwanted dog?" So I hung up. The common room television blared game shows no one could follow. A woman beside me, Agnes I think, cried quietly into her lap. No one noticed. Or maybe they had grown too used to it. On the fourth day, Kara brought forms. "Just some signatures, Mrs. Sanders. Routine. Consent to care, medication schedule, billing information." "Billing?" I asked. "Yes, the invoices go to your children, but we need you to sign off. Just formality." I signed. What choice did I have? But that night something stirred inside me. Not anger. Not grief. Something colder. Firmer. I boiled water in the small communal kitchen and poured tea into a chipped mug. Then I pulled the little notebook I had tucked into my suitcase. I wrote a single line across the page in capital letters. "If they think this is how my story ends, they don't know who raised them." The notebook snapped shut with a sound louder than it should have been. And for the first time in days, I slept without dreaming. But the next morning, when one of the aides casually mentioned that Emily had said I was here for good now, my heart stilled. Not temporary. Not until they figured things out. For good. That was when I understood. This wasn't about comfort. This wasn't about safety. This was about erasure. I smiled politely, my hands still, my voice calm. But inside, I began to sharpen myself like a knife. Because if they thought they could put me away quietly, they were about to learn what happens when you bury a woman still breathing. The fifth night, I sat awake listening to the rhythm of the building, the groan of the pipes, the shuffle of rubber soles against linoleum, the occasional cough breaking through the padded silence. Rose Hill had its own heartbeat, steady and suffocating. I wrote again in my notebook. Not poetry, not prayers, plans. Observations. Who unlocked which doors, who carried keys, who lingered near the gates. I learned quickly that silence was a weapon here. When you stayed quiet, people underestimated you. And when people underestimated you, they talked too much. That afternoon, while folding laundry in the communal room, I overheard two aides whispering near the vending machine. Her daughter signed her in permanent. Not short-term, permanent. Did she tell her? Doubt it. They never do. Permanent. The word slid into my chest like ice water. That evening I called David again. Straight to voicemail. I didn't bother leaving a message. What was the point? Instead, I sat in the lobby, cardigan neatly folded, hands calm in my lap, watching the doors that never opened for me. Mabel shuffled by with her walker, stopping long enough to press her paper-thin hand against mine. "They're not coming, hun," she said without cruelty. "How do you know?" "Because mine don't either." Her words were blunt but not bitter. Just a fact. The next morning I asked Kara for a small favor. "Could you print something for me?" She smiled, nodding. "Of course, just send it to the front desk email." She didn't ask what it was. She thought it was a crossword puzzle, maybe a greeting card. What she handed back to me an hour later was 2 pages long, neatly stapled. The title read, "Power of Attorney Revocation." I slid it into the back of my notebook, my hands steady. I didn't have my lawyer's number anymore. But I remembered his firm. The name was embossed on a Christmas card I'd kept, tucked behind an old photograph of Emily at age 8, missing her 2 front teeth, smiling with the kind of innocence she'd long since buried. I asked the receptionist if I could place a call. She handed me the desk phone. My voice trembled only slightly as I said, "Hello, my name is Helen Sanders. I need to revoke a document my son filed. I want my rights restored." The woman on the line, Jessica, didn't gasp. She didn't pity me. She just said, "We can help. Can you come into the office?" "No," I said. "I can't leave." A pause. "Do you have someone who can act on your behalf? A friend, maybe?" A friend. The word almost made me laugh. At my age, friends vanish like smoke. But then I remembered Lydia. Lydia Marks. She had been my neighbor 20 years ago, 30 years younger, widowed too soon. She had the kind of kindness you didn't forget. Soup when you were sick, flowers left without a note. We'd lost touch after she moved, but I still had her address. I explained to Jessica. She said if I could reach Lydia, if Lydia could show ID and come to the office, they could start the process. That night I sat by the window, notebook open. The pen dug into the paper as I wrote Lydia's name in thick, deliberate strokes. My lifeline. My thread out of the net. The next day, I asked Kara if I could sit on the bench near the parking lot. "Of course," she said, wheeling me out though I didn't need the chair. Protocol, she called it. From that bench, I saw the outgoing mail slot by the delivery entrance. At exactly 3:15, the truck arrived, collected the bin, and drove away. The second day, I came again. This time with a letter addressed to Lydia. Inside, I didn't beg. I didn't dramatize. I wrote plainly, "They've taken my house keys. They've signed documents behind my back. I need help. Please contact Lewis and Gold Law on my behalf. I trust you." I slipped it into the outgoing mail, my hands calm. The following evening, I paced my room. I wasn't supposed to, but I did anyway. My knees ached, but my mind raced sharper than it had in years. Every shadow in the hallway felt like an eye. Every chipper nurse's smile felt like a warning. At 3:47 the next afternoon, my phone rang. "Mrs. Sanders?" A woman's voice. Calm. Steady. "Jessica." "Yes, this is Jessica from Lewis and Gold. Marks reached out to us. She's agreed to help. She'll be meeting with us tomorrow." I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed. My hands gripped the receiver tighter than I meant to. She came. My voice sounded small, far away. She came. "We'll begin the paperwork immediately." I hung up the phone and pressed both hands against my lap, holding them still so they wouldn't tremble. That night, I bribed Robin, the night nurse, with shortbread cookies to let me use the staff kitchen. She watched me stir sugar into my tea, tilting her head. "Planning something?" she asked softly. I met her eyes and smiled faintly. "Just remembering who I am." When I went back to my room, I opened my small wooden box. Inside was my wedding band, the one I hadn't worn since Richard died. I slipped it on. The metal was colder than I remembered, but it steadied me. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a resident. I didn't feel like a liability. I felt like myself again. And when the knock came the next morning, when Kara stepped in and said, "Your daughter's here, Mrs. Sanders. She brought some forms." I already knew this battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Emily walked into my room like she owned it, heels clicking against the linoleum, folder pressed against her chest, her perfume filling the air like something that wanted to smother rather than comfort. "Hi, Mom," she said brightly, too brightly. The kind of brightness that's meant to distract you from the fact that the lights are going out. She leaned down and kissed my cheek, quick, perfunctory, already pulling away. I didn't stand. I sat in my chair, hands folded neatly in my lap, and asked in a voice so calm it startled even me. "Another form?" Her smile flickered. "Just authorization. It's for long-term care. It lets us make medical decisions on your behalf. Nothing to worry about." I tilted my head. "You mean after the one you already filed?" Her eyes widened just for a fraction of a second. Then she covered it with a laugh, nervous, sharp. "You revoked it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her polished confidence wavered. I could see it in the way her fingers tightened on the folder. "Mom, this isn't safe. You're being manipulated." I stood slowly, my knees aching but my back straight. "No, Emily. I'm being restored." She froze. The room was quiet except for the clock ticking. For the first time in years, the silence belonged to me. "What are you talking about?" she asked finally. "I spoke to a lawyer." Her mouth dropped open just slightly. "A lawyer?" "Yes. The same kind of lawyer who filed the first documents you shoved in front of me. Only this time he's on my side." Her face shifted. I saw it, the exact moment the mask of concern cracked into calculation. I'd raised her. I knew every twitch of her mouth, every flicker of her eyes. "Well," she said carefully, "if that's what you want, of course. No one is trying to trap you." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "Then why was my house listed for sale?" For the first time in decades, Emily lost her composure. Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp as knives. "What house?" "You know what house." She tried to laugh again, but it didn't land. "David was just exploring options. You said yourself the place was too much to maintain." I said I didn't want to climb the back stairs anymore. That's not the same as signing away my life. Her cheeks flushed. Her jaw clenched. "Mom, you don't even live there anymore." "That's not the point." We stared at each other, the air thick and brittle between us. Finally, she dropped her gaze. "We've already had offers," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "I know." Lydia had driven by the house, seen the discreet little for sale by private listing sign staked into the lawn. No public listing. No fanfare. Just quiet theft. "I've already revoked the transfer," I said. "The house is moving back into my name. And it will stay there." Emily's nostrils flared. "Mom, we're trying to help you." "No," I said evenly. "You're helping yourselves." She stood there, folder clutched so tightly her knuckles turned white. For the first time I saw her as she really was. Not my little girl with ribbons in her hair. Not the teenager who used to slam doors. Not the woman with polished shoes and perfect eyeliner. No, this was someone else. Someone who had mistaken my kindness for weakness. Her voice was sharp when she finally spoke. "How long have you been planning this?" I lifted my chin. "Since the day I realized you and your brother never planned to let me go home." She looked down at the papers in her hands but didn't open them. Then she smoothed her hair, forced a smile that looked more like a grimace, and said, "Well, then I suppose there's nothing else to talk about." She turned toward the door. "Emily," I said softly. She stopped, shoulders stiff. "Tell David he'll be hearing from my attorneys this week. The sale is off. The assets are frozen. And neither of you represents me anymore." She didn't turn around. Her hand lingered on the door handle, clenched tight. Then she walked out, heels clicking like gunshots down the hall. That evening, Mabel slid into the chair across from me in the common room during TV time. The game show blared in the background, but neither of us watched. "Well?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. I allowed myself the faintest of smiles. "I believe my daughter is reconsidering her definition of helpful." Mabel chuckled, a dry, knowing sound. Told you, hun. They never put you here for your comfort. It's always about theirs. I nodded, folding my hands tighter around my notebook, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming every inch of ground they thought I'd surrendered. And for the first time since Richard died, I wasn't just surviving. I was fighting. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. The hallways were quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists in places where people are waiting to die. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I sat at the little desk by the window, notebook open, pen steady in my hand. 2 lists. The first was everything they'd taken from me. My house, my garden, my freedom, my dignity. The second was everything they hadn't yet taken. My name, my will, my memory. That second list was short, but it burned brighter than the first. At breakfast, I sat beside Mabel while she stirred her oatmeal into mush. She leaned closer and whispered, "Your girl looked mad yesterday." "She was," I said. "And you?" "I'm not mad," I replied, surprising myself. "I'm awake." Mabel's lips twitched. "Good. Stay that way." Later that day, Kara came by with her clipboard and cheerful tone. "Mrs. Sanders, how are we feeling today?" "Restless," I said. She blinked, clearly not used to honesty. "Well, maybe you'd like to join the art activity in the rec room. It's watercolor day." "I think I'll pass." She tilted her head, as if she'd caught a hint of rebellion but wasn't sure what to do with it. "Okay," she said lightly, "but let us know if you need anything." I smiled at her, polite, patient, because what I needed she couldn't give me. By afternoon, Lydia had called. Kara handed me the receiver, her brows pinched with suspicion. "A personal call, Mrs. Sanders?" "Yes," I said. "For me." Lydia's voice was warm, steady, a lifeline. "Helen, I met with the lawyers. Papers are moving. They'll need your signature on a few things, but we're set. The revocation is in motion. The trust too." I gripped the phone harder than I meant to. "Thank you, Lydia. You don't know what this means." "I do," she said quietly. "And don't worry. You're not alone in this." When I hung up, Kara gave me a look, curious, maybe even suspicious. But she didn't ask. She wouldn't. Not yet. That night Emily called. First time in weeks. "Mom," she said, her voice soft, almost sugar-sweet. "I think we got off on the wrong foot the other day." "The wrong foot?" I repeated. "I just mean all this legal stuff, it feels so unnecessary. We're your children. We love you. We only want what's best for you." Her words were polished, rehearsed. A script. "Then what's best," I said slowly, "is for you to respect me." There was silence on the other end, long enough for me to imagine her face tightening. Finally she said, "We'll talk about this. Together. David and I will come by Sunday." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She hung up, and I sat in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, notebook open, drawing a shaky line under my lists. Sunday came. They didn't. Instead, a staff member brought me an envelope. No return address, but I knew Emily's handwriting. Inside, another letter. Printed. Impersonal. "Mom, please stop fighting us. This isn't good for you. The lawyers are only trying to confuse things. Rose Hill is your home now. Please accept it. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Love, Emily and David." The paper shook in my hands, not from weakness but from fury. I folded it carefully, slid it into the notebook with the others. A record. Evidence. That evening Mabel shuffled into my room, her walker squeaking. She glanced at the letter on my nightstand. "They're pushing harder, aren't they?" "Yes," I said. "And you?" I looked out the window at the parking lot where Lydia would soon arrive again. At the gate that wasn't locked, just guarded by eyes that underestimated me. "I'm pushing back," I whispered. Mabel chuckled, dry and knowing. "About time." That night as I lay in bed I thought of Richard again. Of his laugh. Of the way he used to tease me for being too nice. "Too nice will get you trampled, June," he'd said. He was right. And I wasn't too nice anymore. Because I'd decided. I wasn't just taking my house back. I was taking myself back. And the next move would be mine. Sunday morning came again. And this time I dressed with intention. Not in the soft cardigans they thought suited me. Not in the slippers that whispered of fragility. I put on the navy skirt Richard always liked, the one with the sharp pleats. I tied a scarf around my neck, pinned my hair back, and looked in the small hand mirror until my face reminded me of the woman I used to be. Firm, steady, untouchable. When the receptionist announced my visitors, I already knew it was them. Emily and David walked in like they owned the room. Emily with her folder tucked under her arm. David with his phone out, scrolling even as he kissed my cheek. "Mom," Emily began, smiling too brightly. "We're glad to see you. Really glad." I didn't smile back. "You missed last Sunday." David slipped his phone into his pocket, finally looking at me. "We got tied up. Work's been crazy." "Work," I repeated, letting the word hang. "Of course." Emily sat down, crossing her legs, adjusting her scarf like she was on some interview panel. "We don't want to fight. We just want to make sure everything is smooth and safe. That's why we brought these." She tapped the folder. I didn't reach for it. "What are they?" "Just updated paperwork. Nothing serious. Medical directives, long-term care authorizations. Standard stuff." My laugh was sharper than I intended. "Standard? You mean the same kind of standard papers that transferred my house behind my back?" Emily's smile froze. David cleared his throat. "Mom, come on. Don't make this about betrayal. We did what was practical." "Practical," I echoed. "That's what you call it? Selling the home I built, where your father's roses grew, where your height is still penciled on the pantry door." David sighed, exasperated. "That place is too much for you. You can't maintain it anymore. You don't even live there." My hands trembled, but not from weakness. "I don't live there because you put me here." The silence was sudden, heavy. Emily leaned forward, her tone softer now, rehearsed again. "Mom, we're only trying to help. You don't see it, but you're not safe alone. You could fall. You could." I cut her off. "I could also breathe. I could garden. I could sit on my porch. Here I am not living. I'm being warehoused." Her eyes flashed, but she didn't answer. I stood slowly but firmly. My knees screamed, but my spine was steel. "I've spoken to my lawyers. The deed is reverting. The trust is secured. The sale is void." David's face darkened. "You've what?" "You heard me," I said evenly. "I revoked everything. You slipped past me. You don't own my life. And you don't own my house." Emily's composure cracked just slightly. Her hand tightened on the folder until her knuckles whitened. "Mom, you don't understand the mess you're making." "No," I said. "You don't understand. For 52 years I built that home. I earned every nail, every brick. Your father trusted me enough to put it all in my name. And you thought you could erase me with a signature." I moved closer, close enough to see the flicker of panic in Emily's eyes. "You forgot who raised you." For once, neither of them spoke. Finally, Emily rose, her chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't over," she muttered, clutching her folder like a shield. "No," I said quietly, "it isn't." They left without another word. That night, Mabel found me sitting by the window, my notebook open, pen still in hand. "Well?" she asked. "They know," I said. My voice was steady. My heart wasn't. And now they'll fight harder." I closed the notebook, slid it under my pillow. "But so will I." For the first time since Richard died, I felt something fierce in my chest. Not grief, not fear. Fire. I wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. The following week, the air in Rose Hill shifted. Or maybe it was me. For days I walked the hallways with purpose, not shuffling like the others, not small. Staff noticed. Residents noticed. Even Mabel raised an eyebrow. "Something's brewing," she muttered. And she was right. Wednesday morning the lawyer came. Not Jessica this time, but a man in a gray suit with sharp glasses and a calmness I recognized. Authority. He asked for me by name at the front desk. The receptionist looked startled, but she let him through. We met in the small lounge by the courtyard. He shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Sanders, I'm Tom Lewis. I work with Jessica. We've prepared the revocation papers, the trust, and the injunction against the property sale." The words were heavy, but they were mine. Mine. "Will it hold?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "It already has. The paperwork was filed yesterday. The house is yours again. And it will remain so. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Not from fear, not from weakness, relief. Sweet burning relief. But Tom wasn't finished. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Your children may contest it. They'll argue incapacity, claim you weren't of sound mind when you signed. Are you prepared for that? I straightened in my chair. Mr. Lewis, I've been of sound mind longer than they've been alive. He chuckled softly, then handed me the folder. My name, clear and bold, sat on every page. Mine. By Friday, Emily stormed in again. She didn't knock, didn't smile. David followed behind her, jaw tight, fists clenched. Mom, Emily hissed, waving a paper. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said simply. I've protected myself. You've ruined everything. David snapped. The sale was almost finalized. He caught himself, but it was too late. You what? I asked quietly. His silence was my answer. I stood slowly, hands gripping the chair for balance but not for courage. I didn't need courage anymore. You tried to erase me. You tried to erase your father. That house isn't just walls and wood. It's us. It's him. It's 50 years of work and love. And you wanted to sell it like a used car. Emily's face hardened. We were helping you. No, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut. You were helping yourselves. For the first time they both faltered. I opened the folder Tom had given me, laying the papers out on the small table by my bed. This is done. Legal. Binding. The house is no longer in your reach. And neither am I. Emily stared at the documents, color draining from her face. David looked like he wanted to shout, but no words came. Now, I said, softer but firm, you'll leave. And you'll think about the kind of children who abandon their mother in a home and steal from her while she's still breathing. And when you think of me, remember this. I may be old, but I am not weak. And I am not done. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Emily gathered her things, silent, her eyes wet though she blinked hard to hide it. David muttered something about lawyers under his breath, but even he didn't sound convinced anymore. They left without another word. The room felt lighter when the door closed. That night, Mabel wheeled herself into my room, grinning crookedly. Well, General Sanders, looks like you won your war. I smiled faintly. The battle, at least. And the house. Safe, I said. Mine again. Mabel chuckled. Good. Maybe when I'm dead, you'll let me haunt your porch swing. We both laughed, but my chest ached with something deeper than humor. A strange mix of sorrow and strength. Later, alone, I sat by the window, notebook in hand. I wrote a single line. They thought this was the end of my story, but it was only the beginning of theirs. I closed the notebook, slipped it back under my pillow, and turned off the light. For the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. And when morning came, I woke with fire still in my bones. Because I hadn't just reclaimed my house. I'd reclaimed myself. It's been 3 years since Rose Hill. 3 years since my children tried to write me out of my own life. I'm back in my house now. My house. The hydrangeas bloom again in the front yard, stubborn and bright, like me. George's roses came back too, after a little care and patience. The swing on the porch creaks in the evening breeze, and sometimes I sit there with tea and let the world move slower, softer. Emily and David? Well, they came back once, both of them together. No shouting this time. No folders of legal forms or slick words about what was best. Just two middle-aged children looking at a mother who no longer bent under their decisions. They stood in my kitchen like strangers, awkward in the space they thought they'd claimed. We just want to make peace, Emily said quietly. I nodded, polite but cool. Peace is good, I told her. But trust takes more than words. They've called since then. Holidays, birthdays. Not every time, but more than before. Sometimes they come by with the grandchildren. I smile, I hug, I listen to their chatter. But I never forget. I can forgive pieces of it, but the scar remains. Because once you've been discarded, you learn to see the truth in people. And I saw it in them. Mabel didn't live long after I left Rose Hill. But before she died, she sent me a letter. One line only. Don't waste your freedom, June. Make it count. I keep that letter tucked in my recipe book. And I've taken her advice. I host neighbors now, women like me who've been made small by someone else's decisions. Widows, mothers, grandmothers. We drink tea, we laugh, we plant things in the garden. We remind each other that we still matter. That we always did. Some nights I think about that driveway at Rose Hill. The sound of the car door slamming, the echo of my son's voice saying, "You're staying here now, Mom. It's for the best." And I smile. Because they thought they were ending me. But what they really did was wake me up. This is still my story. And I'm the one writing the ending.